Hello and welcome to the Shack News Chattycast, the podcast that knows how to revive Eris and will tell you how, and the 19 steps spread sporadically throughout this episode, so you have to listen to the whole thing. I'm one of your hosts, Steve Watts.
I'm your other host, Brian Carr, and Steve, as always, the Chattycast brought to you today by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/chattycast. That's ChattyCast.
All right, today's guest, our favorite third chair, sorry to all those others, and a man whose personal life just got to level up, Ozzy Mejia.
Yeah, it's been a while, 12 hours, you guys. So, my voice is almost shot, and it's
So great podcast.
It's been a more wild ride than Mr. Toad, which I went on last night. That was fun.
I think you should tell the listeners who might not be familiar with your news.
I'm engaged.
Nice.
Yeah, Ozzy is engaged.
My life is over. No,
She's making an honest man of him and such. So yeah, congratulations, Ozzy. That was really cool to see. I didn't even know that was like a thing that was about to happen. It was very surprising.
I kind of didn't either. It just happened.
That's funny. You got engaged at Disneyland, right?
I did, right in front of the giant Christmas tree. Which shout out to Nicole Zavalage, who actually helped give me that idea. Like, she was telling me that if you tell the Disneyland employees that you're planning something like that, they're more than happy to help you out, because that's kind of what they're there for, is for those quote unquote magical moments. So
yeah, they want that stuff to happen because it makes everybody else look good. Yeah.
And I just saw I just looked at the Disney PhotoPass album, and everything looks great except for one where some asshole just like photobombed us.
You need to get that one too, though. You need to
You have to.
Yeah. Down in front.
So when you're showing your grandkids, you can be like, "And this was some random asshole." It'll be great. So today's show, I sort of implied this with my intro, is inspired by Final Fantasy VII. Not necessarily completely about it, but inspired by it. We're going to be talking about how games age gracefully, and when we do remake games, how to let go of certain tropes and adopt sort of modernization, what things are going to stand the test of time and what doesn't. Sort of a big, broad topic inspired by a lot of the Final Fantasy VII news recently. So first, before we get to all of that, Ozzy, aside from having a wild, crazy 12 hours and playing the I'm Getting Engaged game, what games have you been playing lately?
It's been nice to actually start digging into my Black Friday pile now that I actually kind of have the time for it, even though I actually do still have like a pair of reviews I'm working on. But I do actually still have some games that I'm playing now, including Halo 5 Guardians, which I'm so happy to actually get to play Warzones out in the wild, even though, I'll tell you what, I know this probably goes without saying, but it's a much different animal playing with like members of the press who are actually like instructed on like what goes where and like how the thing works, than playing with random people where just like everyone's trying to kill each other, and I go, yeah, you can do that, but that's not entirely the point of the game.
But also it's objective based, so
exactly. Like, there are a lot of objectives, not a lot of guys who are going after the objectives, but I noticed that like the people that kind of grasp the rules are just like kind of killing everyone. Like, I was on the wrong end of most of those games, and those scores weren't close. So
yeah, I was just getting. Last time I jumped in, I was just getting like slaughtered from across the map with a pistol, and I'm just like, what the hell? Because apparently the general audience for Halo is much better at the game than reviewers.
But it's okay, because I'm farming my rec packs, and really once I start opening those things, then it's going to be time to bust some heads with a couple of ghosts and a couple of giant scorpions. And on top of that, I can't believe I'm saying this, it's been over a year, but I'm just now getting to the Mario Kart 8 DLC.
Wow!
I just now tried that for the first time, and I was like, "Where's this been all year?" I'm so happy with like how now I haven't done 200cc yet. That's I'll come a little later, but the courses, the tracks themselves are just so well designed, and also so many homages like put in, whether it's just like the music or even like something as simple as like when you're finishing the F-Zero track. Like, the music that's playing in the background is like the same music that you play after you finish an F-Zero track. I'm like, that's actually really kind of cool. Like, little things like that. And also trying out the amiibo suits.
Oh yeah, I feel like I would have like kept playing. I only played the downloadable tracks for Mario Kart a little bit, just because other stuff got in the way. But I would have bought all of them. Like, bought everything and at least played once if they had just kept making them forever.
And
Because they're just so well designed.
it's one of those things where I wish that Nintendo didn't strictly have like a 6 months to a year like post-launch support, because you're starting to see that like Splatoon's coming to like the tail end of its stuff,
Mhm.
and it's even Smash Brothers is getting its quote-unquote final Nintendo Direct, and it's like, but you can support it so much more. There's so much
Yeah,
more
I
you can put
mean,
into this. Mario
Nintendo
Maker's
games tend
gonna
to
be a
last so
sad
long
day.
anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's gonna be sad when they get to the end of Mario Maker and they're just like, oh yeah, we're done with this, and it's like, no, but you can't be done. There's so much more you can do.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of a crazy strategy because you hear about, like people playing Smash on the Wii or the GameCube or whatever for like not just months, but years after it is released. Even still, like they could capitalize on those things for a really long time if they wanted to.
It's not unheard of. I mean, you see this on PC gaming all the time. Like Counter-Strike's still getting updates, for God's sakes. I mean, they're not all great updates, but because last I heard, the gun they added this week is not going over very well. But there's games that are supported for years and years and years on end, and I kind of wish that Nintendo would take that same strategy.
Hmm. Yep. It seems like they set this stuff sort of ahead of time, and that means we get like really cool refined uh, rollout for that 6 months. But then after that, it's just like brrr,
Yeah, and it's
kind of
not
a
like
shame.
these things are annualized releases, like some of the stuff we're seeing for like Battlefront and all that stuff, where they're just like, oh yeah, we're gonna do a 1 year season pass and then we're working on a sequel. Like no, there's really nothing like that holding it back. So,
Mhm.
not,
Although I predict they're going to make another Splatoon, like at some point.
oh
They've
for
got to.
sure, that's
That
a
thing
given at
blew
this
up like
point.
I don't think anyone expected.
That's like new IP success right there. You don't see that a
Yeah,
lot from them these days.
yeah, yeah. So Brian,
Mm,
what have you
yes.
been up to?
Well, nothing super exciting. We did our big charity event on Saturday, so I played a little bit of a lot of things. That I did Just Dance on the internet. There was video evidence of me doing Just Dance out there. It has not been archived. You can't
If
go
someone didn't
looking.
know that was a game name, you were like, I did Just Dance
No,
on
no,
the
it
internet.
was yeah, it's Just Dance, the game. I played that one on the internet. But as far as what I've been doing on my own, I got the new Skylanders, which as the Toys to Life guy, I guess I am. Uh, it's good. I like it. It's a lot less restrictive in terms of what they lock behind different toys and that sort of thing. I've got to get a Sky vehicle, and I think I'll be pretty much set, other than just maybe picking up a character here or two that I think is cool.
Hmm.
But it's good. The driving stuff is, I feel, not quite as well developed as it could be. They had a potential to do something really really neat here, like make a Skylanders Mario Kart thing, and they didn't
Yeah.
quite pull it off. But it's still fun. Like I like the characters. The new characters are cool. It looks pretty. Like they cut down on some of the more annoying aspects, like Eon bugging you every 5 minutes to buy more Skylanders. Um, so that's all pretty good. And then continuing my track record of being the worst, I have also started playing the mobile game, the gotcha mobile game, Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, which
Uh-oh.
so
Didn't we
launched.
just
Joe,
get
are you
another
liking
one of those
it?
games like today? Like, isn't there something out there called like Star Wars Uprising or something like that?
Well, Star
Like,
Wars Uprising is more of like a Diablo-esque RPG.
Yeah, that's
This
like an
is,
RPG
and
that
it's
supposedly
really
has a
boring.
story.
oh no.
Supposedly, Uprising has a story that like ties into Episode 7 and actually like matters.
Yeah, but I don't
How can you
care
make a
enough to actually
Diablo? How
play
can
it.
you make a Diablo clone with Star Wars boring?
It
Like,
just wasn't fun. I just didn't like
how's
it.
that
Yeah,
possible?
that doesn't sound bad. That sounds great.
But this one is more of a it's a turn-based fusion. Like longtime listeners will remember that I was very much into Marvel Future Fight over the summer. Um, that I've since cooled on that significantly, mostly because it became an incredibly abusive grind. But this one is a lot like that, except it's much more strategic and turn-based, and I think a little bit more fair in terms of how it portions out its rewards, how it gives you access to certain characters and materials and that sort of thing, and also lets you have those characters be useful longer, at least so far. I didn't put any money in, but they had a special on getting the Dark Side starter pack, so I got Count Dooku and some other stuff for like $5. And that's probably the like that's it. I'm not spending any more on this game 'cause it's not really worth spending more on. But it is fun. It's a good time killer. It's got that Star Wars flavor, and it's hitting at the right moment. Any other time of the year, I don't know if I'd even give it a second thought. But right now is Star Wars time, so I am happy to play it. I can't, like, in good conscience recommend it. Like, say that this is a great game, you should play it. I'm just saying that I am playing it, and you can read from that whatever you will.
So basically, just like the hype train is like the only real reason.
I mean, it's well enough. Like the loop, I guess. Like, you play, you get stuff. You play, you get stuff. That's entertaining enough. It has autoplay, so I'm doing something else. I can just hit auto and let it churn through the battles for me. I don't have to make a lot of decisions, that sort of thing. So that part of it is very appealing to me, and kind of like trying to build certain teams and then just like go beat on some poor slob on the arena. I can do that too. It's a good time.
I love how for both this and Marvel Future Fight, like, part of your criteria for mobile games is like, well, if it can play itself.
Exactly. No, I'm serious. Like,
I want games that I don't have to actually play.
The way I live my life, Steven, it is nice to have a game where I can hit the auto button, let it play out while I'm walking somewhere. I get to a place where I can stop, I check on it, I do the next thing, I'm walking, and then I'm actually accomplishing things in the game while I'm doing other things in my real life. Okay? Yeah. It's all about added value. Right, it's the same reason why you use credit cards that have rewards points. It's the same reason you do your like walking things and that sort of thing. You want to get some sort of reward for the time you're spending while you're doing other things. It's science, okay? It's psychology.
Yes, of course it is. It's the Pella at the end of the maze.
I have a Jawa. That's all that matters. I have a Jawa. He's level 27. He's great.
And you said he's especially effective against droids, which I find amazing.
Yes, he is. Yep.
Yeah. All right, so with that oddness, I played a game this week for review that when I was looking over other reviews, which I don't do until after I'm done with my review, I saw somebody or other, it might have been Kat over at US Gamer, saying this is the best 3DS game of the year, which I was like, huh, that's probably true. I'm talking about Steamrolled Heist, but it didn't even occur to me to put it in those terms, because I hadn't really thought about how kind of, there wasn't really that much on the 3DS this year, which isn't to take anything away from Steamrolled Heist. It's a very good game.
There's Steam, but that's all I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, and there was Triforce Heroes, which just kind of came and went.
Yeah, that was all right.
So yeah, like Steamrolled Heist probably is the best game on 3DS this year. It sort of doesn't have that much contenders against it, is what I'm saying. But that's not to say that it isn't a good game. It is a very good game. It's just kind of funny that I realized, like, oh wait, yeah, there's not really been a lot of 3DS stuff this year, oddly enough.
Yeah, which is really weird because February they launched the new 3DS XL.
Yeah, and then they just like had nothing.
Yeah.
Much all year. Pokemon
what can you do with this new handheld? Well, you can play your old games on it.
Yeah, exactly. But Steamrolled Heist, I don't know if I know, Brian, you have played Steamrolled Dig. I don't know if you have, Ozzy. Steamrolled Dig was a really cool little kind of crazy mashup where they were like, let's have like Dig Dug as like a roguelike RPG with a cowboy robot. And it's like, okay, I can go with that concept. That's weird. But they've sort of like developed this little universe, this Steamrolled universe, where they can do a lot of different things. They also had that Steamrolled Tower Defense, which is a very unimaginative title, but that was its own thing. This is Steamrolled Heist is I compared it to, it's basically 2D XCOM, right down to the point that, like, if you move the number of spaces that you can fire your weapon, it's orange, but if you move past that and can't fire your weapon, it's blue. Like, it's that much XCOM. But it's 2D, it's a side-scroller, and a lot of it is about sort of doing these fancy skill shots where you see like a wall has a tilt on it, and you can bank a bullet off of that to hit an enemy in the head. Some of the weapons have laser sights, so you can actually plan it. Most of them don't. So it's really about like these kind of skill shots, but set in this kind of XCOM-y strategy layer. And so you're flying around the galaxy and recruiting dudes and inadvertently awakening terrible things. It's like Firefly the game with robots as XCOM, which there's nothing bad about that. And I really enjoyed it. It's like inviting enough because it's got a lot of difficulty modes. I played it on the sort of the default, but if you really want to press yourself, there's like 3 or 4 above the default. So it's got a lot of length and a lot of depth, and there's a new game plus feature that I haven't actually tried yet. So yeah, it was a good time.
Oh, before we go any further, Steve, because I know people are probably yelling at their screens right now, and by people I mean Daniel. We forgot about Monster Hunter 4 in terms of best 3DS game of the year.
Monster Hunter 4.
So
yeah,
we're sorry, Monster Hunter fans. We didn't mean to overlook that. Please don't torch us.
Yeah, that's right. That's true.
It's
Sorry,
okay.
Monster Hunter. I have not played Monster Hunter. But yeah, I did enjoy Steamrolled Heist, and it's in our disclosure notice I said it was $19.99 on the eShop starting tomorrow. It's actually on one of those limited time launch discount things, so I think it's like 16 or 17, something like that. So it's a lot of game for like that much money, and it's fun. It's another little weird gem of a genre mashup that the Image and Form guys are sort of making a name for themselves, being good at delivering. The other game that I played at Ozzy's urging, which I didn't get all the way through, unfortunately, but I got through the first episode, is Tales from the Borderlands.
Yes.
And I really liked that first episode. That was a really good first episode. I wish I could have gotten through the rest of them before Game of the Year voting time. I don't know whether or not it would have cracked my list. I guess spoilers, it didn't crack my list because I didn't get all the way through it. But it's one of those things where you can see Telltale developing like a little bit. It's like baby steps because there's such a Telltale formula now, and people get kind of sick of it. But like you can see like little improvements in everyone. And the thing that impressed me the most about the first episode was near the end there's this big action set piece, which Telltale games are not really known for. But it's this big action set piece with like it's taking place in this large arena space, and there's lots of moving parts and different characters with different motivations doing different things, and them sort of interacting with each other. And this, the MacGuffin flies from over here to over here, and it's a really complex choreography that Telltale has not historically been great at, and they really delivered on it in the first episode. So I was like, all right, well that's something really new and cool. Plus, I enjoy the tone of it being a lot more humorous. Telltale.
I do like that they keep it lighthearted, like throughout the entire story, and even things that really
it's that
heavy
Borderlands
later
humor.
on.
It's dark humor, but it's it's humor.
But also,
anyway.
it has its really dark, dramatic moments, like especially towards the end. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really go entirely away from that lighthearted tone, and it also gets really heartwarming, like towards the end.
Yeah.
Like I'm such a huge fan of that final episode, and I'm just so happy with everything about it, with the exception of the final 5 seconds, where I'm just like, oh my god. And
See,
you know what?
These are all things I need to get there to understand.
I'm dying to see more of it, but then I talked to Telltale on the red carpet of the Game Awards last week, and I go, so how about that ending? You guys gonna follow up on it? And they said you have to ask Gearbox. Oh no, we're not seeing a follow-up to this ending, are we? You're gonna end on a cliffhanger, and that's where it's gonna stay, isn't it? Oh, jerks!
They make season 2 all the time. I'm sure they've got to make a season 2.
I hope so. Well, I mean,
especially with
the funny thing is, and we haven't hit this on Shag. I'll probably write about it later today. But they've actually released a behind-the-scenes 8-minute video on Tales from the Borderlands, and it's just I love that Gearbox seems so happy with it. They have a lot of people on there from like Randy Pitchford and like all them. They seem very happy with how it went, and I'm hopeful that's a good sign for things moving forward.
There's lots of Game of the Year buzz around it. I don't think it's going to win any like top awards, like this is our Game of the Year, but it's definitely going to be on the list for a lot of places. I think
it is on my list. I couldn't put it ahead of a few certain others, but
I'm sure it's going to be on a lot of site lists even, and I think that is probably enough of a boost in the arm to be like, all right, let's make another one of these. But to give an example of like the tone of humor versus how serious it gets, there's a moment in the first episode where you're playing as Fiona, because it's a split narrative. You're playing as this guy that I don't remember the name of, and this,
Reese. You're playing as Reese.
And you're walking as Fiona towards this bar to make this deal. And as you're walking to the bar, this guy just like falls out of a building and then a bunch of like the little psychos, like the whatever you call them, the little people. I feel like the game would probably call them midgets, but I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, but they all just like come running after him, and like three of them just jump on him, and you just see them stabbing him, and it's like that's really dark, but also kind of funny. But then, minutes later, when you get to the bar and you're trying to arrange this deal to establish this villain character as threatening, they show him like just straight up in cold blood, just shooting a guy in the head. And so, like, just as an example, like those are two very violent moments, and they got the tone down well enough that one of them is like, and the other, well establishes that like this is not a dude that you want to mess with. I do wish. This is a minor nitpick and also a minor spoiler, but I don't think anybody is going to be that perturbed by it. I wish Borderlands got away from Handsome Jack for once in its life. Like, come on. I liked him okay in Borderlands 2. There is more stuff involving him in Tales from the Borderlands, and there was more stuff involving him in Borderlands the pre-sequel. If they announce Borderlands 3 and they're like, Jack's back, I'm going to be like, son of a bitch!
I started off with that same line of thought that they could get away from Handsome Jack at this point, but this is such a great, I think, and I'm assuming this is a great send-off for him. Like, I think this is a great way to hopefully say goodbye to the character for good. They did him a lot of justice here. So.
I mean, the way they open Tales from the Borderlands, I felt like that was enough Handsome Jack. Like, again, I might change my mind by the time I get to the end, but the way they open Tales from the Borderlands, you basically have Reese doing this little narration saying like, hey, at Hyperion, Handsome Jack, or he didn't even call him Handsome Jack, he just called him Jack, I think. He's like, this guy who was in charge sort of set the tone, and now everybody at this company is like a backstabby asshole, because all of them want to be the next Jack, And it's like, okay, well, that's a cool way to establish the tone of like what Jack left as his legacy at Hyperion, without necessarily involving him, He's sort
it
of like
explores that theme of legacy a lot more as the story goes on, and I'm excited for you to experience it.
All right, I'm going to get into it. So let's get into our big topic now. Like I said,
I'm going to buy that game for less than $4.
Yeah, it was available.
I think it was only $10 last week during the Game Awards.
It's $3.75 on PSN right now for the entire season.
Oh,
get out!
God.
Really?
I missed out because I paid $10 for it.
Yeah, it was $10 last week during the Game Awards.
Yeah, last I checked, it was $3.75 as part of the holiday sale on PSN for PS4.
Well,
so
those assles.
At that point, I think
$6 less than I did.
I'm going to have to pick it up just on principle.
Wow.
I'm familiar enough with Borderlands where I think I'd be able to follow it just fine from what people are telling me.
We talked briefly about this, and I said, like, you know who Handsome Jack is? He's like, yeah. I'm like, you know that Pandora is, like, super fucked up, and you know that a guy exists named Zero. Like, as far as I can tell, for the first episode at least, that's, like, pretty much all you need to know. Like, just the existence of Zero.
It'll catch you up from there.
I know who a Mad Moxie is. I'm familiar with this.
Yeah, they had a sort of Mad Moxie cameo already. It was pretty funny. I enjoyed it. But yeah, the writing is really sharp and funny in that Borderlands way. And last week we covered comedy games. This is actually kind of one of those, and it does it really well. I actually have laughed at this game, which is rare.
I would have brought that up as my comedy game of choice if I was on last week.
Yeah. But you were off doing stuff.
Yeah.
So let's get to our big topic. As I mentioned, this is sort of inspired by Final Fantasy VII. There have been a couple of Final Fantasy VII developments in the last week since we recorded. There was PSX, which had the big Final Fantasy VII remake gameplay trailer debut. Meanwhile, the release on PS4, people realized, like, oh, this thing has all the mobile cheats. Like, you can kind of cheese your way through this thing. And then news came out a little later that Final Fantasy VII is going to be episodic in some way. Square has been pretty weird about its statements on it. So they haven't exactly been clear about what kind of episodic it's going to be. But it's going to do something with episodes. So all of this leads to the idea of aging gracefully. When you go back to visit Final Fantasy VII these days, if you visit it in its original form without cheats or anything, it's not really the easiest game to go through. And speaking personally, I'm not a Final Fantasy VII hater. I actually really loved it back in the day. And I look back fondly on it for a lot of reasons. I also think it sort of set some bad precedents, but my username is partly based on a character from it, so I can't hate it that much. But like it doesn't. I've tried to go back to it probably 2 or 3 times, and I just have never made it through very far. I've been like, okay, well, this is kind of boring now. So we're going to talk about game tropes, how game tropes last, what makes a good game trope that lasts, what makes a game age gracefully, and when you do remake a game, how do you revise the parts that need to be revised while keeping the spirit alive? Like in the case of Final Fantasy VII, they've re-released it in a way that lets you basically speed through combat or skip combat altogether so that you don't have the grindiness. And the remake looks like it's basically revising the battle system to be a lot like the Lightning Returns game, which I am all in favor of. So initial thoughts, you guys, before I start bouncing us off of Chatty. How does a game age gracefully, either specifically as it relates to Final Fantasy VII or in general?
Just getting rid of some of those annoying tropes that don't really work so well anymore is a good start. I mean, start changing that combat system isn't bad because you got to reduce the grindiness of these kinds of games. And grindiness is really one of the things that I hated the most about Final Fantasy Type 0 earlier this year. Like that felt like I was just not only grinding for hours on end, but then I finally like actually started a mission and went through it for 25 minutes, and then got killed at the end. And like, oh, and now I gotta start over.
And I wiped, yeah.
Yeah, that can kind of segue into save points, checkpoints. Like, I appreciate that roguelikes are, and I'm not talking about roguelikes. Roguelikes are a different beast entirely. But like for anything else, if you're going through like a 25 minute mission and you kind of fail for like whatever reason, or you get cheaped out on something, making you have to start a long stretch over is so irritating.
It's anti-fun.
It's creepy, as far as I know. I mean, I haven't tried Syndicate, but this happened to me in Unity a lot, where I was like invested for 30 minutes, and then like, oh crap, a guard spotted me, or like, oh crap, I slipped up because like I accidentally fell off a wall. It's like, okay, start over. Like, what do you mean start over? Like from the start? I've been at this for 30 minutes. Like, you bastards! Like that. I'm so tired of that. And the more modern games are starting to like kind of inch away from that, and that's for the best.
Yeah, modern games definitely respect your time more. It seems like there's been some sort of edict in the industry that's like, hey, people get pissed off when they feel like we're wasting their time and just kind of padding the game by wasting their time.
Talking about respecting time, there seemed to be a really visceral reaction to Final Fantasy VII going episodic. I mean,
people got
with it that much, but I could be wrong on this.
Pissed. I mean, for me, it didn't bother me just because, like I said, I've tried to go back to Final Fantasy VII and I've never really been able to. But when I think back to my memories of that game, I think of it in chunks. Like I think like the first 10 hours or whatever of that game is Midgar. That's a chunk. That could be an episode. Like the next maybe 10 hours is when you go south of Midgar and then a little bit east, and that's when you discover Red 13 and things like that. Like so in my head, it's kind of already episodic already. So that didn't really bother me at all. I was like, well, I already kind of think of it in these moments where significant things happened.
Well, there's the assumption too, I think people have with it, that each episode is going to be a full price game or something like that, and I just don't see that happening.
Well, I think Square is partly to blame for that because they've been so strange with their messaging that they're like, each episode is going to be the length of a full game. It's
terrible.
Like, well, does that mean it's going to be the price of a full game, guys? Specify.
Yeah, I mean, are we defining what a full game is too?
Yeah, we don't know if we're talking about a Telltale episode or if we're talking about a Half-Life episode. Like, what are we looking at here?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the other thing regarding episodic is like frequency. Like, how often are we going to be looking at these? I think people just have a lot of fears because Square has not explained how this is working. Probably because Square doesn't know yet.
And not to mention, we have no idea when this is coming. I mean, I've been saying, like, if you think people are waiting long for Kingdom Hearts 3, we ain't seen nothing yet, because we may not see this thing until, like, at least 4 years. Like, this could be a long way out.
Yeah.
Especially because they've been saying for years that a remaster would take forever, would take years to
it would. And I think the thing that people need to understand is, like, making it episodic and rolling it out slowly is probably the only way this makes any kind of economic sense. Because that game is gigantic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They don't make
episodic.
RPGs at that scale anymore. Look at what they did with Final Fantasy 13.
Hmm.
Each of those games, each of the three Final Fantasy 13 games, was sort of focused in small scale in specific ways that made it be reasonable for the type of
Well,
RPG they were making.
I don't know if that's entirely a fair comparison because I think Final Fantasy 13, the reason we got 3 games in that series was less because they had that designed that way from the start, and more that, well, we've got this tech, we've got this engine, we've got these assets, we spent a lot of money generating these. We've got to make some return on that investment, so we
Oh
have to get
yeah,
as much
yeah. I
mileage
think
out of
that's
it.
the, I think
This
that
is
was the
kind of a
impetus
different animal.
behind. I think that was the impetus behind making the games. But I'm saying, like, when they were planning, Lightning Returns, they're like, we're going to make a third one of these, Lightning
Hmm.
Returns. We're going to have it all take place in one city. Bam, problem solved. We don't have to make a billion assets.
Well, it takes place in
Um,
like 5 cities, but
yeah, whatever. Anyway,
that's the best one. Lightning
yes, it
Returns is the
actually
best
is.
one, far and away.
Lightning Returns is actually very good. So speaking about the larger trend of gaming tropes being sort of don't last, we got a lot of comments on just general gaming tropes. Freaky Nipples 69, which I'm never not going to laugh when I say that name. Said 90s FPS level design is not
He
fun.
he had to have taken that name just to make you read it.
I know, like that's probably why. That's why he makes sure to comment on Chattycast threads. So 90s FPS level design, the whole rat in a maze approach was never appealing, and getting
Hmm.
lost to find an obscure room for a red key, only to get lost to find the red door. It
Hmm.
isn't always fun. He says he enjoyed Crisis 2 level design a lot. It blended the two nicely. The main path is fairly linear. There's only one way to progress, but sections would open up, allowing you to approach combat as you wanted. And of course, you have the complete open world FPS games like Far Cry. Those work for me because having clear objective markers on a map I can follow. I know
Hmm.
some people like to play with these off, or they ignore them, but that's crazy to me. You just need to wander aimlessly until you stumble upon your objective. So sort of three, I guess, eras of FPS design. It was sort of his central thesis there. 90s FPS design, I think we can agree with him, does not work anymore. It's
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah, and every time we see a throwback, I just feel like it. Like I get what you're trying to do, like you're trying to make a game like it was in the old days, but there's a reason we don't play games that way anymore.
Mhm.
These are, if you look at game design like a series of problems that are solved, we've solved most of the big problems with first-person shooters. It's just iterating on that now, and like I think that's part of what I couldn't get into Wolfenstein. I tried, I really did, but it just felt so archaic by comparison. And I totally understand that this is my personal perspective. I'm not saying that the people, the millions of people who loved it are wrong by any stretch, but I am saying that it is definitely a specific style of game. And
That's
for
true. It was modernized to a certain extent,
Mhm.
but it was definitely trying to harken back to the old days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely like the New Order as far as like modernizing a lot
Mhm.
of those Wolfenstein ideas, including like the limited ammo and that type of thing. I personally love the New Order. I love the Old Blood from earlier this year,
Mhm.
but trying to go back to that old '90s Wolfenstein, well,
No.
that
Yeah,
doesn't feel like it's aged well.
yeah. I think the thing that Freaky Nipples brought up that I want to sort of explore a little bit is he sort of brought up two modern eras of shooter design, and I'm curious what you guys think will actually last. There's the open world Far Cry design, where there's just dangers scattered around the map and you might run into them randomly. Then there's what he called the Crisis 2 model, which I think is also the Halo model, or the classic Halo model, not so much the modern ones, where there's sort of like um, the corridors that lead you from battle zone to battle zone. Like they've got these designed areas for combat to take place in, and then sort of little connectors between them. Um, so what do you think is going to stand the test of time in like 10 years, 15 years? What are we going to be playing in our FPSs, or is there room for both of those?
I think there's room for both to an extent. A Far Cry, and I went to last week to play a little bit of Far Cry Primal, and the one thing that I like about that design is it leads to stories. Like just having random stuff happen to you can just lead to like kind of fun anecdotes. Like where I was talking in the preview about like, oh yeah, I went to switch out my Jaguar for my wolf. My wolf's coming. He got jumped by a bear like out of
Mhm.
nowhere, and he killed my wolf, and he killed me. Like son of a bitch.
I mean
Like it leads
that's
to those kinds of fun stories, and we got those out of Far Cry 4 when were seeing like fortress rushes and like co-op and that kind of thing. So that kind of design is really good for that sort of like anecdotal, like fun, like water cooler kind of talk. And you don't get that so much with a linear thing like Halo, but then again, sometimes you just want like a straight A to B story.
Yeah, yeah, it creates a different story environment, and I think that's probably the reason that there's still differentiation on that point. People don't just like sort of go down the one that works or the other. Mobab brought up a bunch of other points. Just he listed a litany of of bad tropes, which I thought was pretty funny. We can discuss some of them a little bit. Some of them I don't think there's that much discussion. It's just like, yeah, that sucks. But cover shooters. Remember when that was the thing? Cover shooters?
Okay, now that's an interesting one because we just got Gears of War remastered earlier this year.
That's true, yeah. And I'm sure
Do
that
you think that's aged well?
Gears of 4 is going to be, it's
more like
it's got to have
Gears
the cover
of
mechanic.
War.
That's going to be that's going to be a cover shooter. It has to be. That's the legacy of the series. But there was a time when Gears of War was so big that everybody was a cover shooter. And now it's being used sparingly. Like you can take cover in, Tomb Raider or Assassin's Creed Syndicate, but it's not like all of the combat encounters are designed around the fact that you're hiding behind a wall.
Yeah, I never minded Gears as a cover shooter. I minded Gears because the AI was dumb as a box of rocks. Like that was my issue with Gears.
And the enemies look like a box of rocks.
Yeah,
it's
so gray and brown and gray. It started that trend too. God. God.
Yeah, he says another one, unlocks. Unless it's for the story, give us all the damn unlocks. It's poor game design that forces you to play more just to have fun. Uninformative bar graphs for example, gun stats.
Yeah, I'm with him on
no
that
manual saves. He complained about not having manual saves, which I feel like that's a much improved thing in RPGs, but not so much in other genres. I like that he broke this down very detailed. 5A voice acting. Most voice acting is not improved at all for many games. I'm looking at you, Japanese games. 5B voice acting instead of text. There's nothing wrong with text. Save some money and just have dialogue. One thing that kind of annoys me about the voice acting text dynamic is that I like to play with subtitles on, but I can always read faster than I can hear. And so when you have to skip through the dialogue because you just want to read it and get through it, you have like them starting the first 3 words of every sentence. They're like, "Welcome, Guardian. So you need to." But like, just doing that over and over again, and it sounds really weird. He says 6 unskippable introductions and movie cutscenes. I think everyone can agree. What the fuck? Like,
there's no reason to make your stuff unskippable.
Don't ever do that.
Make me hold down a button or something, but don't make it unskippable.
Unless you're loading in a giant Fallout world in the background or something.
Even then,
hide a cutscene behind a loading screen. But even then, usually you can skip the cutscene and it's like, okay, well now you have to deal with a loading screen. Like that's the trade-off you're making, and as long as you know that.
Sure, you want to skip now?
You sure you want to see this tooltip for the 400th time?
I would also argue that like replaying audio bits and dialogue every time you die is something that needs to go away.
Yeah.
That's kind of an ancient holdover, and it's always been that way, and it's never needed to be that way.
Arkham had some fun with it, like having the villains sort of look down at you and like make fun of you. Like that was a cool idea.
Sure.
But if you ever got stuck on a boss and died any more than like 3 times, you're like, god damn it. Like,
They did that a little bit with Arkham Knight. Arkham Knight seemed to have a lot more of those.
Yeah, I'm sure they were trying to address that specifically. But yes, there's a lot of voice acting cutscene things that I think do not work very well. One that sort of bothers me is that the reason that I play with subtitles on, it's not that I'm hard of hearing. It's that I play with the volume fairly low because I usually play at night when my wife and daughter are asleep. I play with the volume fairly low, and I play it with a low enough volume that if I were watching TV, I would be able to tell what people are saying. But the animation of lips is not good enough in games yet that you can do that. There's like little subtle cues when you're watching an actual human talk. Right. You can still tell what they're saying when it's soft. That does not work in video games.
Yeah. And two, like also audio mixing is still not that great in a lot of video games. Audio is treated like an afterthought, so sometimes in order to make sure I hear the dialogue, I have to have subtitles on because the music might be way too hot behind it or something like that. I might not be able to actually hear what's going on.
The best is when you can tell that they just dumped the script in as the subtitles, and any improvisation that the voice actor did did not get recorded. So well, it'll be something like completely different, or there'll be a line that's like not in there at all, and you're like, he did not say that.
It bugs the hell out of me in in Black Ops, the new Zombies mode, where you've got these really talented actors delivering not that great dialogue, but still you want to hear it. You want to hear Jeff Goldblum. And the music is just so overpowering you can't hear it. And not only can you not hear the actors, you can't hear the instructions the game is giving you because the music is so loud. So it's...
You don't like that old speakeasy music?
Well, I like it fine. It's just I want to hear what the characters are saying so I have some idea of what I'm actually doing. And that to me is, again, like, it shows that game sound is still kind of an afterthought. We haven't gotten past that.
Here's an interesting comment that I don't disagree with it, but it's the opposite of what I would have thought. DiamondFire05 says, put simply, newer, younger gamers hate grinding. And as a grumpy old man who does not have much time on my hands, I was like, I thought older gamers hated grinding. Does everybody hate grinding? Is this just a thing?
I think everybody hates grinding because the younger set doesn't have the attention span for it. And I think for us...
They've got their Minecrafts and their iPads. For us, we just don't have time. For them, they've got, they've got Snapchats and such. I'm such an old.
See, I don't know. I want to say, like, a lot of kids will grind if the reward is right. Like,
yeah, I mean, like, you hear kids talk about playing Pokemon or Minecraft or something like that. They're like, oh yeah, I spent like 500 hours getting like all of my Pokemon up to level 99 or building this really elaborate structure in Minecraft. Like, they're fine with it as long as it's engaging in some way.
Right. The Call of Duty is all about the grind too. Like, and that's one of the biggest games with younger players.
That's the example that Diamond Fire brought up. He said grinding out levels can be used smartly, as in the carrot on the stick approach of Call of Duty, where it is there as a support feature aimed at giving you shiny new toys. But most people are no longer willing to put in the hours of grinding just to advance the story of a game.
Right, and the other thing too is that Call of Duty does it in a way that's smart. Is that you're always getting something. Like you spend a half an hour, you're getting something.
They have figured out that the pace of doling those things out like really well.
Right, they have a very good pace on that.
To bring it back to the topic that sort of sparked all this, Final Fantasy VII, when they announced, or not even when they announced, when news sites started picking up, like, oh, there's these cheat features in this. The first thing I thought was like, oh, they bravely defaulted it. Like, they totally, like, Bravely Default was basically a Final Fantasy game to the point that I think they just didn't want to call it Final Fantasy, but it was like almost.
There was some story about that, is that they didn't want to actually, like, they wanted to be a Final Fantasy game, but they also didn't, so they had to like pick a title that had like nothing to do with Final Fantasy.
But still had FF in it.
Exactly.
But yeah, like, it was basically a Final Fantasy game, but it was, the thing that I loved so much about it is that it gave you that same feeling of these classic, like, Super Nintendo era Final Fantasy games, but with these little tools that let you just skip all the bullshit, And so when they picked up, they're like, oh, Final Fantasy VII added these cheats. You can one, fast forward so that the battles take like a couple of seconds if you need to grind, and two, you can just turn off battles altogether. So get through a story section, get to the end of the story section, find a good place to grind, turn on the fast forwarding, grind for a little bit, then go back.
Yeah, I was just saying, like, if you need to grind, turn the encounters up to max. It's like just get the grinding done in like a couple of minutes.
And like that was so cool. I almost
wanted exactly to rebuy the Bravely Default model. Like, that's what's so funny about it. Is like they took this thing that was not a Final Fantasy game and kind of fixed some of the bad tropes of classic Final Fantasy and retroactively plugged it into an old Final Fantasy.
I think that Bravely Default should be the model for all JRPGs going forward. That game was basically perfect in how it was designed, and I mean, I didn't love everything about this, like the middle part of the game, but the design of the gameplay is just perfect. And
the middle part meaning
the constant repetition. I mean, it's been over a year. We can talk about how, like, I think we can sort of talk about spoilers a little bit. I'm not going to ruin the whole game. But there's a point where you essentially have to keep replaying the same events again and again and again and again, and it takes a while.
I think 4 times. Yeah.
Yeah, and until you sort of find out why that's happening, and then the rest of the game plays out. But
I don't know how that got past anyone at Square.
Yeah. There is a certain point where just everything just jumps off a cliff.
And
The
I've
first
heard
time it
that.
happens, though, it's really cool, and I kind of
Mhm,
expected the end of the game to come after the first time,
mhm.
but then it like did it again, and I was like, "What?
I
What
hear
just
the
happened?"
second one's not as
And
bad
then
with
it
that
happened to
though.
then it happened to the fourth time, and I'm just like, "Okay, this is this is
Yeah.
some bullshit." It got real old. Um, and I think we can end on this one, Jingle Tard, which is both festive and insulting. Said, as much as it doesn't matter, graphics do kind of factor into the enjoyment, no matter what I'm
Mhm.
playing. I'm playing Final Fantasy VII right now, and having never played it prior, and holy shit, those character models look bad. I realized at the time they were probably amazing and top of the line, but it's just jarring to see stuff like that on my screen in 2015. I think Final Fantasy VII is an especially funny example of this because
Yeah.
it's not just that they look bad; it's that they look incredibly inconsistent. There's like three
Yes.
different versions of every character.
Well, here's my question. This version they put on the PlayStation 4, are they using the PC version as a base? Because I think the PC version made the character models a little bit more consistent.
I don't know. I know the
They
cheats are
did.
from
They
the
said
mobile
that the
version.
one that's on PS4 right now is the port.
Okay,
Oh, okay.
because I don't know, like I don't know this for sure, but I looked up a scene of the slap fight on the cannon at Junon because that's one of the stupidest parts of the game, and if it's not in the remake, I'm going to be upset. But like I noticed that the character models in that were much more like had more human proportions. They weren't super deformed like they were in the original PlayStation version.
Mhm.
So I assume that's the PC version. I'm wondering if that's the one they ported. So it sounds like that's the one they ported over. So I'm curious if that actually is the case.
I mean, it was always just weird in Final Fantasy VII how you had the battle mode characters, which looked one way, you had the cutscene characters, which was another way, and then you had the in-game wandering around characters, which looked like some sort of odd polygonal Popeye.
Hmm.
It was very strange. Um, but that's
Polygonal
all they could handle.
Popeye?
Yeah, like they had like the little skinny arms and then the gigantic. They had like their arms were hourglasses. Is my point.
Blow me
Um,
down.
yeah. For the last time, no. Anyway, let's move on to our sponsors.
Yes, that's
Brian.
right. Audible.com is offering you, the listeners of the Shack News Chattycast, a free audiobook download as well as a free 30-day trial to check out their service. There's lots of great books on games, tech, and hundreds of other topics to choose from. Every week, we're going to highlight one we've personally enjoyed, and we think you might too, but this week, we'll let you kind of figure that out for yourself. There's a lot of books out there. There's over 150,000 of them. Okay? So, we can't do everything for you. Just go to audible.com, or sorry, go to audibletrial.com/chattycast. Again, that's audibletrial.com/chattycast and find your new favorite book.
All right. So it's time for some newsy bits. Let's talk about news. This one, the headline is very exciting. Speaking of Star Wars, which everyone is all the time now, Star Wars 1313 concept art sparks interest in possible revival from Lucasfilm. Apparently, Lucasfilm producer and president Kathleen Kennedy is still considering working on 1313. She interviewed with Slash Film and said, "Our attitude is we don't want to throw away any of that stuff. It's gold. And it's something we're spending a lot of time looking into, pouring through, discussing, and we may very well develop those things further. We definitely want to." So, who knows what form this project would take? If it would be, a screen adaptation, or if they toss the idea over to EA to make a game out of. But still, 1313 was one of those exciting projects that just got canned all of a sudden when the deal with EA went through.
It looks so exciting that if they're going to do something with it, they need to do something with it, and if not, just let it die and don't
Yep.
tease people with it.
Stop jerking us around.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think it came out after the fact. I mean, it was the thing that everyone kind of assumed when they saw it, was that it was a Boba Fett game. And it came out after the fact. I think, wasn't it confirmed? Like, yes, okay, now we can say, yes, it was. I don't know why we were playing coy about that. But yeah, Boba Fett has this huge fan following, and he's getting his own movie. So,
Yeah,
hey.
and we know Amy Hennig's working on something. So what that is, I'm curious to see because that actually could turn out really, really cool.
Yeah.
And it could turn out, and it probably will turn out better than Battlefront.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's not hard.
I mean, I love Star Wars with all of my little heart, but I'm just not that into multiplayer shooters, and I just want a game that looks that good as a single player game.
I played it some more last night, and I actually uninstalled the trial, and I figured out my problem is that it's beautiful, it looks, it sounds, it's just like the movies, but it's so boring. It's just not exciting or fun or anything at all.
Did you happen to see those?
I absolutely love the way it looks, but it's just so shallow.
Yeah,
And I wanted to love it more than I did, but it's so like going from Battlefront to Halo or to Black Ops,
Mhm.
it's night and day.
Yeah.
Hmm. Did you see the mod that makes it basically look like movie
Yeah.
stills?
And
That
that's
is
great,
insane.
but it doesn't fix the
Um,
game. So
I know, I know. As someone who has not played the game, I'm just saying that was really impressive.
here,
Um,
let me tell you how. Imagine the most generic 1992 shooter you can think of, but
Oof.
really pretty with
Eesh.
Star Wars stuff in it.
I'm virtually pulling on my collar right now. I'm like,
Yeah.
"Ugh." So
I'm
moving on.
literally going through the Battle of Jakku DLC just to see how beautiful it looks. But
Hmm.
as
Yeah,
far as like actually playing,
yeah.
yeah, it's
What
not
a
thrilling
shame.
me.
What a
I kind of
disappointment.
wonder. We can go off on a slight tangent about this. I kind of wonder, like, if playing the Battle of Jakku DLC will enhance or ruin some of the magic of the movie. Because, like,
I
I don't
wouldn't.
know. I don't know what that battle's going to look like. I've never seen the movie. I want to go in fresh. Um,
Well, it
yeah.
takes place like 29 years before the movie actually starts, but still.
Oh, okay. All right. See, I don't know these things. I haven't been
But
following the movie.
I still
I
wouldn't.
want
I
to go
mean,
in extremely fresh, is what I'm
exactly.
saying. So Mercedes-Benz is bringing new content to Super Mario Maker. This is so freaking weird. I had to bring it up. I think this happened while you were out yesterday, Ozzy, so you might not be familiar. But remember how they had Mercedes-Benz DLC in Mario Kart? They have
I do, yeah. That was a weird one,
they
but
have
at
some in
least it
Mario
was.
Maker. You can have Mario
Can
drive around in a Mercedes.
This is great. I love stupid like I think I said here I'm a fan of terrible things. I love things that are just so bad they come right back around to being great. And this is one
So
of them.
there's a course called the Mercedes-Benz Jump and Drive. You get an unlockable costume, which is the Mercedes-Benz GLA with Mario inside.
That's
And then
cute.
once you complete that level, you get the costume added to your Mystery Mushroom costume collection. So you can make people have little like Mercedes-Benz. I assume it's just like it's a costume, so it's not changing the mechanics.
Right.
You're
You can
just
make people car Mario.
yeah, exactly. But I will bet you that there is going to be level design around this where people try to make like race courses.
Oh, of course. That's what's great
Um,
about that game.
yeah. So this is like weird. I assume Nintendo just has some sort of ongoing deal with Mercedes-Benz, and so we're going to see these kinds of things popping up every once in a while. It made a lot of sense for Mario Kart. It was
Hmm.
weird. Don't get me wrong,
But it was neat though. Those carts look cool.
but yeah, but it was weird, but it was cool and it made sense. For this, it makes less sense, but it's
I
kind of
almost
funny.
think it's like a thing that made more sense in Japan, and then they decided to do it over here where it makes less sense, but it's still beautiful.
They're like, yeah, sure. Or at least over there. I joked, but for all I know, this is going to happen. Like they'll replace Epona with like a Mercedes in the next Zelda game.
Yeah,
Um,
let's do it.
see, I love how Brian is all on board.
Look, anything like listen, I am not the guy you go to like get like a serious take on what's ruining Zelda. Because 9 times out of 10, the things that you guys say is ruining Zelda are the things I like. So this would ruin Zelda, and I think it's awesome.
And Ganondorf drives a Chevy. Anyway,
Personally, I can't wait to go to Star Fox and start flying as a Mercedes through
yeah.
space.
Yeah,
Like,
why not?
like how is a Mercedes flying through the cosmos like this? That's crazy.
Because
Use the
it's just that
Mercedes
good.
wing, Fox. Let's move on. This
Luxury
last
our
one.
wings.
The HTC Vive consumer VR headsets have been delayed to April, but that still means that VR is starting in earnest next year. So, uh, obviously, as Shack News, we are future-facing and technology-focused. What are your thoughts on? I sort of brought this up not so much to talk about the delay, because how much can you really say about the delay, but to really talk about VR coming into its own in the first half of next year. It really seems like that's going to be the time when all these devices sort of start hitting or start getting really heavy promotion, and that's going to be the make or break time as far as consumer adoption for these things.
It's also a good way to kind of also talk about what we saw from PlayStation over the weekend at the keynote.
Yes, the
We saw
PlayStation VR big debut.
Yeah.
With,
Not
Red,
all of it looked great.
right?
I liked the concept of the PlayStation VR being able to do co-op, being able to do multiplayer gaming.
Mm-hmm.
That demo that they had looked ugly as sin, but I liked the idea of it. And
Yeah.
just little things like job simulator and like that type of thing, like that looks really. I guess interesting is the word for it. I mean, I'm
I gotta
really.
say, Rez as their showpiece makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Whoa. The line for Rez was outrageous. I wasn't able to try that.
That's like the one game that I think is better for being in VR. I can't think of any others that really would be.
I
the
think
one
the
that
only
the one that they didn't show off that I was actually able to try out, and I'm surprised they didn't show this off, Drive Club in VR.
oh
Like
yeah,
that.
that makes a lot of sense too.
Yeah, sure.
Like
Yeah.
it didn't look as polished as it didn't look as polished or like as smooth as like Drive Club like the game itself. So that's probably why they didn't show it off. But actually being able to put on a virtual headset and just like drive in VR is like actually really cool. Like all
Yeah.
that was missing was like the vibrating seat. I had the
I think
vibrating wheel.
the main concern for the PlayStation VR is going to be, people have brought this up before. I'm not saying anything revolutionary, but peripherals on consoles are really hit or miss.
Yeah.
Among the PC crowd with Oculus, there's a lot more. There's more enthusiast and hobbyist, high tech type people that just want to like have all the coolest, latest stuff.
Yep.
A consumer device like the PlayStation, it's a lot harder. Although the Oculus, I feel like its major struggle is like, hey, everybody, you need a PC that can handle this, that can handle outputting this VR.
My biggest concern with VR, and nobody seems to have addressed this yet, none of the big manufacturers, at least, and if they have, correct me if I'm wrong, is how are you going to demo this? How are you going to go to Best Buy or Target and set up a station where people can actually try this out? Are you
There's
going
gonna have to be a blue
that?
shirt just like hanging out, like permanently, the VR blue shirt.
Yeah, like constantly like wiping down the headset
making sure you don't fall over, and yeah.
That's the thing they need to figure out. That's how you get mainstream acceptance.
When I went to an Oculus event, it wasn't an Oculus event. It was an event for what's that game where you're stranded in space? I don't remember the name.
Tacoma?
It looked cool. No, it wasn't Tacoma. It was
the other one.
Yeah. But anyway, I went to an event for that, and they had like these stools set up, and they were like, well, you can sit down in the stool or you can stand. It's your choice, And I tried standing for like a couple minutes, and then like that was a bad idea. Like, like I ended up like falling backwards onto the stool because I like put it behind me specifically for that reason. But yeah, I feel like they're gonna need to plan that out.
Yeah, and it's just hard. It's such a hard thing to demo. Like, how can you take this on Good Morning America and show people what it looks like? How can you demonstrate this over the internet to people who don't already have the technology? That's going to be the biggest hurdle. The tech is there. The tech is neat. It's just the selling is hard.
It's really cool when you're experiencing it. So if you see Matt Lauer on the Today Show going like, ooh, wow, like that might sell some people, but it's not the same as experiencing it.
Yeah, I mean, like if I see Matt Lauer on the Today Show going, like, ooh, wow, I'm less thinking, hey, that's really cool, and more like Matt Lauer's a goon.
That's not hard
either.
The
only name I could think of from the Today Show. I don't follow.
No, I would say I think that a lot when I watch the Today Show.
In fact, I don't actually know if he's Today. Is he Good Morning America?
He's Today Show.
He's Today Show.
All right, well,
I watch it every morning. He's there.
Okay.
And you're always going, Matt Lauer's a goon.
Let's move on to Beat the Doc. Today's game I am very excited about. Usually I make these games kind of pointless little exercises in knowing wordplay, but today I'm actually going to be asking some trivia questions, like properly trivia that you might actually know. So today's games is all about remakes, ports, and other such re-releases. Many times developers will add all new features or modernized changes to these games that were lacking in the original version. I'm going to detail a remake and ask about a change, not necessarily a good one, a change added to the rejiggered version.
Okay.
So I've also arranged them in such a way that at least a couple of them I think are in your areas of expertise. So Ozzy, Pokemon Omega and Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire brought back some of the most celebrated Pokemon games in the series' long history, but added what strange new dress-up feature?
Strange new dress? Oh, the costume Pikachus.
Yes, cosplay Pikachu. Brian.
Yes.
A remake of the original Mega Man X. Maverick Hunter X let you play what unlockable character?
Oh, that would be Vile.
Yes, it is Vile. Now the questions are going to get slightly harder. Ozzy, the 3DS version of Majora's Mask made what major change to its time manipulation mechanic?
Ooh, time manipulation. Ooh, I don't know this one.
Instead of fast forwarding to a specific point, you got to pick which hour you were fast forwarding to.
Oh.
Yeah. It was a lot more user friendly.
Nice.
Brian.
Yes.
River City Ransom on Game Boy Advance, called River City Ransom EX, was almost a straight port, but it lost what important feature from the original?
God. Multiplayer?
Yes, there was no true co-op mode because it was a Game Boy Advance game.
They could have
So,
done it, but they didn't.
Ozzy, chance to tie for this last question.
Chance to tie?
Tiebreaker.
What?
Usually tiebreaker, but this is a chance to tie. Whatever. The 2010 remake of the N64 classic GoldenEye. Brian, you already won spiritually.
Okay.
Stayed more or less true to the original story, but made one major change to its protagonist. What was it?
It's not Pierce Brosnan. It's Daniel Craig.
It is Daniel Craig.
Oh,
They changed James Bond to Daniel Craig. They also changed apparently the tone of the game and some of the events to be more Daniel Craigy, like more of his era of Bond than the
to
Pierce
be
Brosnan.
less GoldenEye.
Yeah. We're gonna remake GoldenEye.
I honestly
take the
forgot that
GoldenEye
ever came out. Like, I completely forgot there was a new GoldenEye game.
Yeah, there's a
apparently.
reason for that. There's a good reason for that.
It was
And
not
because
good.
now it's all coming back to me, because I thought it was just like an Xbox Live Arcade thing, and like, no, it was a full-fledged retail thing, wasn't it? Like, they really went all out for it.
Activision's history with Bond games wasn't great.
I
And
remember
say,
there was one on the PS2 that had like a car on the cover, and I was like, that one was all right.
yeah,
I don't remember
think that was
anything else
EA,
about it.
I
actually.
think I
That should tell you
played
something.
Agent Under Fire. That was okay.
That might
Uh,
be the one I'm thinking of. I don't know.
I have a history with 007 Bloodstone, which it
Ooh.
wasn't a good one. I didn't like that game at all. I thought it was kind of ridiculous and
Mhm.
overly simple and like all that. So I was really surprised when I came to the GameFly offices one day, and I was having a talk with Garnet Lee about it, and Garnet's like, "Oh, I love that game." I go, "Really?" I'm like, "Oh, okay." Just didn't want. I don't want to burst this bubble or nothing. Like,
I think
to each his own.
This
When
game
they
you
go
like
back
is
to look
garbage,
at-
but all right.
when they go back to look at GoldenEye and try to figure out why people loved it, I think they're looking in the wrong direction. Like it was exploiting these AI systems where you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I can trick all the soldiers into this room and just have a bunch of remote mines on the ceiling.
And we
You
also
know?
loved it because we had no other options. Like, that was the other thing,
That's
too.
also true.
There are
Yeah.
better options now.
So
Yeah.
Activision, all you have to do is eliminate every other shooter on the market
Yep.
and also give us sort of a sandbox.
Yeah, can we go back full circle and talk about like some of the things from GoldenEye that didn't age particularly well, right
Like,
down to
Like
the
the
graphics?
game,
Yeah.
like basically the whole thing.
Yeah, like look, that got me into console shooters. Like
Mhm.
that made me think like, hey, shooters can be done on console. I became a shooter fan because of GoldenEye and because of Counter-Strike. But I can say that right like today, I wouldn't go back and play GoldenEye for
No.
anything. That
Oh,
game,
no.
no.
It's not good.
There's
No.
so much wrong
And
with that game.
even in Rare Replay when I went back to play Perfect Dark, which was like sort of their improvement on GoldenEye in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
Like
it
it was
was.
actually better than GoldenEye.
Mhm.
But when I went back to play the original Perfect Dark, I was like, yeah, this is not my memory.
Although I'll always treasure the days when I used to plant the proximity mines on spawn areas. Like I used to plant spawn proximity mines. They spawn right into an
You put a
explosion.
remote mine on a dude's foot, like that was good fun. Anyway,
It was very much a game of its time, and it was great for its time.
It was
Yeah.
for its time. Not so much in 2015.
No.
it did not age gracefully to bring it back to today's topic. So that is the show, everybody. We're gonna get out of here. Ozzy, do you have anything to plug for your content going up this week?
I'm actually, as part of our retrospective and part of our upcoming Game of the Year coverage, I'm looking back at the year in major releases. And today we have September. September should be up on today. We're recording on a Thursday. October's gonna be up later, and November, December should be up on Friday. So
Yeah,
we've
those have
covered
been
like
really
the year.
good. I have forgotten about some games and then remembered when I read that thing.
And that's actually why I took this task, because I'm just like, I bet you there are games I'm forgetting about. And
Yeah.
sure enough, there were games like Kirby and the Rainbow Curse. None of us remembered even existed.
I mean,
Oh,
it was
I remember it.
it was an alright game.
No, it
Speaking-
wasn't.
I
of,
thought it was fine.
No, it wasn't.
Speaking of Game of the Year stuff, the Shack News staff, we have cast our ballots. We know what is ostensibly our Game of the Year. We are still waiting for the Chatty vote. So if you haven't gotten into Chatty, I don't think Chatty is going to change the number one. I'm just guessing here.
Last I checked, there is a certain game leading the pack.
I think
more than
the
I thought it would be
Chatty-
a closer vote. But so far, not so much.
Yeah, the way that our vote works at Shack News, for those who might not be familiar, we have all the staff vote, and that includes non-writing or video staff. That includes if a secretary wants to, if our office manager wants to chime in, if our salesperson wants to chime in, my attitude is everyone who plays games is a gamer. They all get to vote. So we all vote. I tabulate the votes. Chatty counts as one staff vote. So we let our community count as much as any one of us. So all of our votes are in. The Chatty vote isn't in. But I think that there are some areas that there are point differentials that they could actually affect it. But I think the difference between number 1 and number 2 is more than 15 points, which means that they can't affect it. So I think it's pretty much locked. But we will be rolling out that coverage the week after Christmas during the sort of holiday break when we're all just, sipping Mai Tais on a beach and stuff, like the big money game journalists that we are. So
I'm trying to remember the last time that the staff vote and the Chatty vote was a consensus, like it matched. It might have been 2012 with The Witcher 2.
I think so. Yeah, I think that's true.
I could be wrong about that.
Usually we disagree.
No, it wasn't. And Zab's going to get on us for this, but Zab, I remember Zab was complaining that the staff was getting reamed for naming Witcher 2 instead of Skyrim.
Yeah, that's true. This year's going to be interesting to watch. I think we've got a good diverse list. I'm really proud of our list this year.
This was
we're going to have that going up along with a lot of content, just about a retrospective of the year in general.
I think I've got a thing coming.
Events that have been happening. Even Brian has a thing coming.
Yeah, it doesn't count for anything, but I'm still right.
We let him shoot his mouth off a little bit too. It's very nice of us.
And of course, we're having our own podcast retrospective, right? I think.
Yes, obviously. Yeah, that's going to be the other piece that goes up. The way that we do our podcasting, I'll just share this as general show notes. The week of Christmas, we're going to have just like some sort of holiday-themed show. I haven't really settled exactly what it is. The week after Christmas, when all of the once all of the Game of the Year articles have gone up, we're going to have our actual podcast go up, which will be recorded well in advance, obviously. But it's going to be us just taking the top 10 and just talking a little bit about what we loved about all of them. So we won't be really taking chatty feedback in the way that we usually do for that one. We can probably just grab some chatty feedback from their own votes. But basically, it's a very positive podcast because it's like, let's just celebrate the year and talk about what we loved about all these games. So zero bitching allowed in that one. And then we'll be back to our regular schedule, obviously, after the new year.
Our regularly scheduled bitching.
Yeah, our January, nothing's coming out, you guys, bitching. So that's the show. Brian, do you have something to plug before we go?
Naps. Naps are good. I'd like to take a nap.
Yeah.
They're
all right.
good for you. Are
you done with your semester? I thought that I saw something that you were finishing with your students.
Oh, okay. No, they had a Smash Brothers party as their last day of class. They earned it, but and I've got some stuff that's coming, but it's not coming anytime soon, so I don't really want to promote it yet. I mean,
I was going to say you could take naps because now you're done with your.
Oh, yeah, I could. Yeah.
Your students.
No, that's the thing. I'm still not done. I won't be done for a while yet. We still have a ways to go. We still have finals. I still have papers to read and all that. So.
Yeah.
So hence my need to plug naps because I'm a fan and I don't.
And also to play
games
that don't require you to play them. You can
I can take a nap. I can start Star Wars.
Something.
The squad thing. I wake up, fumble around, hit the button again. I sleep for another 5 minutes. It's good.
Yeah, it's great. So that's the show. Please review us on iTunes.
Games that you can play while you're sleeping. That's the next innovation.
Games you don't need to play, because what's the fun?
Yeah, exactly. I'll give you $60 and you just give me the end scene.
So that's the show. Please review us on iTunes. And for Ozzy Mejia, the newly engaged, again, congratulations. Ozzy Mejia.
Thank you.
I am Steve Watts.
I am Brian Carr.
And we will see you on Chatty.